let's start off with the home team here. A nice, tidy win over the St. Louis Blues last night. Connor Hellebuyck, I was in Edmonton for the game on Saturday, Craig, and listen, Helly, his first week was not up to the incredible standard that he's set. They were down 2-0 early, and it seemed like it was maybe going to be a long night for me with my Oiler pals in the stands. And then he just reverted to the guy that we have seen for so long. It wasn't as busy last night, but certainly made some big saves. In a lot of ways, the Jets go as Connor Hellebuyck goes, and we've really seen him step up in these last two wins for Winnipeg.
No question about it. And nobody's surprised. I think we're more surprised when Connor's a little bit off his game, not when he's on it, because when he's on it, I mean, he's one of the very best goaltenders in the entire National Hockey League. I don't think anybody would question that. And a team tries to find its footing. You're trying to find your footing in all the different areas of the game. And the first period versus St. Louis on Tuesday night was interesting. I thought that the Jets were in a situation where they gave up some good scoring chances, but Hellebuyck was terrific, as you point. But then the second period began, and they really took control of that game. They scored those 2 goals, and they were going for the jugular. And I love that about the Jets. They wanted to get the St. Louis Blues out of any thought that they could get back in the game. And maybe that became part of their mindset because of what happened in Edmonton on Saturday night. Edmonton's up 2-0, and they were able to stay in the game. But then you think about a team that has no foothold in the game, and that was the St. Louis Blues. Nate Schmidt makes a terrible play at the offensive blue line, breakaway by Kyrou. And then shortly thereafter, Dylan DeMello doesn't make a very strong play, breakaway by Kyrou. And who saves the bacon? It's Mr. Connor Hellebuyck. And you need that. And a goaltender will tell you, hey, that's my job. I got to do it. But those are the types of – when you have such control of a game, keep control of the game. Don't give up that part of the game. And that's part of, developing your group, developing your team, developing your players to understand where it's at. I made a comment during the intermission, after the second intermission. You hear coaches, and Rick Bowness is no different, manage the puck, manage the game. And when you're making those plays like Nate Schmidt and Dylan DeMello made, that's not managing the puck, it's not managing the game. And the saving grace, pun intended, was Connor Hellebuyck.
Those 2 plays, as you mentioned, we got bailed out by Hellebuyck. That didn't as much happen in those first 3 games. But I'm interested in your perspective on the Jet blue line overall. Again, Josh Morrissey continues to build off that incredible season he had last year. We've seen Nate Schmidt be a healthy scratch, come back in, had a stronger game against the Oilers on Saturday. But what do you make of the Jet blue line? And if you were looking at a spot to improve the club, is that where you're looking at, Craig?
100%. I'm not looking anywhere else. That is, and there's always desires. Okay, could we be a little stronger here? Could we find a little bit more strength there? Yeah. Listen, you have Josh Morrissey. He's a clear-cut number 1 elite defenseman. He's a stud. After that, it falls off pretty considerably. It really does. What Josh Morrissey needs is along the lines of what Ottawa did in trading for Jacob Chychrun. It takes some of the pressure off of Thomas Chabot, who was asked to do everything and then more, playing upwards of 30 minutes a night. Then they end up drafting Jake Sanderson 5th overall, and he's really emerged. To me, the Winnipeg Jets, at best, after Josh Morrissey, they have a number 4 defenseman. And I don't think they have a steady number 4. I think if you got a really good number 3, Brendan Dillon could support that in some ways, maybe Neil Pionk, but you can have a collection of 5-6 defensemen for the most part and a number 1. And when you get up against the hard competition, there's too many of the defensemen that get overextended. And I think that's where Kevin Cheveldayoff and the management team has to look really hard in improving this team. They get you're not getting a number 1 defenseman, but you get a really good number 3, a really good number 2, whatever it may be. This team becomes measurably better just by that type of an addition.
Well, and we've talked a lot about the blue line for the last couple of years, and it is relatively basically similar. We thought Ville Heinola was going to crack the lineup, and of course he had that unfortunate injury. So I imagine he'll be in the lineup at some point. But your point is well taken. That being said, Craig, this team's quite different. There's always the talk, the Jets just keep running it back. 5 of their 12 forwards weren't on the Winnipeg Jets on March 1st. Now, of course, Gabriel Velarde is out of the lineup due to the unfortunate injury that he's had. But when you look at this club, I think you can certainly make the argument that they're much deeper, but how would you compare the forward group of the Winnipeg Jets 6 games into this season as opposed to what you've seen for the last couple?
Yeah, well, let's keep Velarde into the mix. I know he's out. I know he's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks, but let's talk about what he brings to the team. And, Adam Lowry talked about it at the outset. He talked about, listen, the 3 players we acquired may not be individually as good as Pierre-Luc Dubois, but the 3 of them make our team better. That's exactly what the goal always is. It's to make your team better. It's not, listen, if it's always just about just getting good players, and everybody wants good players, but you need balance in your lineup. Velarde, Kupari, and Iafallo, they're big, they can skate, they can wear down opponents. Ask any defenseman in the league, what's one of the hardest things to do? It's defending against big, fast, strong guys, spending time in your own zone. So now when you watch those players, those 3 additions, now you can spend more time in the offensive zone. You can grind along the board. You can wear out the other defenseman, which also takes pressure off your own defenseman. So in that trade, I think that Kevin made his team stronger. I think he made it deeper. I think he made it better. And, it takes some of the pressure off of the blue line, which we just talked about. And now he can focus in on trying to find a player that can fit into that group and really help it along, which will strengthen the team again. But so to me, that's where you want. Adam Lowry's a fantastic number 3 center who can do so much for your team. Mark Scheifele's been playing great. There's no area of the game where they have enough skill, but the size, the power, the speed, that's going to help you be a good team. You watched it closely last year in the playoffs. And the Vegas Golden Knights, they made trades for Mark Stone and for Jack Eichel, two really top-notch players, and then they signed Pietrangelo. But the strength of their team is the depth, the balance. William Carrier, Nicolas Waugh, Keegan Colasar, Jonathan Marchessault, who they got. They traded Riley Smith, but they bring in Barbashev. So when you strengthen your team and you have balance in your team, that makes your team better. I think the Jets are a better team. I think they're better capable for the grind and to put pressure on opponents, take some of the pressure off your own blue liners, and now give Kevin some opportunity to improve in some other areas. Because there's a lot of really good prospects in Winnipeg, but just like the Vegas Golden Knights, Kelly McCrimmon, that's all. They went and looked and said, wait a second, we're going to have to give up some good players to get good players. But when you have good prospects, you can go and do that. That's exactly what they did. And I think Kevin and the Jets are going to have a similar opportunity.
Craig, I've got to ask you about Mark Scheifele. You just mentioned him and the great start that he's had this season. And listen, he's been here for a long time. The last 2 seasons were not smooth. He had 42 goals last year. But when you look at the end of the season, it wasn't even playing center. It seemed to be rocky. And there were major questions as to whether he would be back. Myself, and I think a lot of people thought that, that might be it for him as a Winnipeg Jet. Amazingly, things changed quite quickly in and around training camp. He and Connor Hellebuyck signed those 2 massive extensions, identical deals. Just a quick thought on that. And Mark Scheifele seemingly, in my opinion, kind of turning the page and starting a new chapter and looking as engaged and as good as maybe we've seen him.
I can't argue with anything you just said there, and looking as good and as engaged as we've ever seen him. So prior to last year and then the year before, and I'll share this with you. Mark got suspended for that hit on Jake Evans in the bubble playoffs, back in 21. And I was very critical of the play in terms of it being deserving. Anyway, I ended up running into Mark in Calgary during the summer. And one of the things that he talked about was not realizing how hard, people not realizing how hard it was to be in that bubble, all the restrictions. You were kind of with the team, but not with the team. You weren't really traveling. You couldn't go out. All those things that weigh on individuals around the world. And now you have players that, they can't see their family. Pierre-Luc Dubois told me, he said, I couldn't visit my mom and dad. I was in the same city because of COVID and everything. So I think there was some impact there. And then you come out of that and, you come back into kind of a normalcy that what was normal, maybe not as normal. And you're struggling to find that rhythm. There's questions about you. The team isn't performing. It had missed the playoffs. And I think that Kevin, made some, he put belief in the team prior to the last season. And then the team showed some good signs, but, to Rick Bowness's comments, when push came to shove, they got pushed back. And I think that Kevin really went and spent some time evaluating his group, talking with his individual players, specifically Hellebuyck and Scheifele, and said, hey, here's where we're at. Here's what I can do. Here's what you can do. And, it's the only organization that Connor and Mark have known. And we know that the organization is a strong one. It's a good one. They take care of their people. They care about their people. And I think that Mark and Connor probably needed some reassurances. I mean, a contract extension certainly helps it, but they were going to have options outside of Winnipeg. I think Kevin Cheveldayoff deserves a tremendous amount of credit in terms of saying to the players, we got you. We want you. We got you. And we're going to make this team someplace that can be a place where you feel you can have a chance to win. And that's what management's role is. And you're selling to the players, but I think that that's what Kevin was able to do upon reflection. People can argue if he did it quick enough. People can argue if he should have made more changes. But when you look at everything that the Winnipeg Jets have done and the homegrown talent that they've done, I mean, I'll argue that they're the best. Nobody's better than them at scouting and development. And now you can, with key players at key positions, play into the level of capability. I think that there's a lot of opportunity here for further growth and for the team to take steps forward in their play and become a contending team. I do believe that.
And I mean, the dual nature of the signings too, I think, were significant in a number of ways. I mean, it sends a message, or at least maybe helps curb the narrative that everyone's just dying to get out of Winnipeg, and which is not true. I mean, history has told us that it's not the case, but when you have a Dubois situation that goes on along, that can kind of take on a life of its own. But I'm interested, Craig, especially with like 3 new players coming in from LA that are in a brand new spot. For one of the first things to happen is your 2 star players re-upping and committing for another 7 years. It's a great message to the guys inside that room about the direction of the team as well.
And there you go, direction of the team. So who sets the direction of the team? Mark Chipman and Kevin Cheveldayoff. They set the direction for the team. And players and everybody involved have to believe that this is a direction that they want to jump on board with and go in. You don't want a backseat driver saying to you, hey, you should turn left there, or wait a sec, you should turn right there. Take this exit. You need to be committed to going in the direction that you're going into. And I think that, when Connor said in his press conference, he goes, there's nobody I'd like to be more tied to than Mark Scheifele when I signed him. That to me was really telling, because over the course of time, you hear, narratives, you hear talk and everything, and talk can be cheap about, other players and what they were feeling. When Connor said that, I said, this is a real positive sign. And you're right, the direction they're going into. So that sends a real strong to Josh Morrissey and to Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers and other players that are young. And you're also setting the standard and the template for the next group of young players coming through. And trust me, there's a lot of good young players. You do know right now who's one of the best players in the entire NCAA hockey, right? You do know this, don't? I'm not.
Our guy Rutger.
I never ask you a question assuming you don't know the answer, because I know you know the answer.
Listen, Rutger McGroarty gets brought up in the chat every day, and he's having a monster season right now. And great start for Brad Lambert and Chiprikov and Lucius with the Manitoba Moose.
Yep.
So there is some exciting things.